Welcome back to the second part of this module here. We've been talking with John Beard, a well-known caver, National Speleological Society Fellow, former president of the Grotto chapter that I belong to, a caving club here in Missouri, and just a great guy all around. He showed us in the last little segment some of the caving gear that most people would want to have, and some of the ways that you'd get ready for a cave. But I want to turn to you, John, and sort of say, thank you again for coming here. I know from being in a club with you that not only have you spent many years here mapping caves while you worked full-time for a local firm, but that you also have spent many years perfecting, and I think in some, well, I don't know if it's the majority, but in no small measure, the effort that you have put into learning how to restore caves that have been vandalized and restore. I know you attach broken speleothems all over the place. You've done hundreds of them, I know, in a couple of caves I've been in and taken my students in, and it's amazing what you do. And so I know that you have some of that published with the National Speleological Society, and they made you a fellow. So maybe could you talk about some of the good things or bad things to do in a cave for students and the students of this class, and maybe even how they could find a local grotto or NSS, or what the value would be if they wanted to connect with one of those folks?
Sure. First of all, I belong to a national organization, the National Speleological Society. It's an umbrella group that includes cavers, spelunkers, cave researchers, and cave managers, anybody who has an interest in caves. And this is divided into local chapters, which are called grottos. Most of the clubs actually are called something grotto. And these are local chapters that people can go caving with. They get involved, they do project work, or they just simply go to a cave together. It's somebody to go caving with, and the one thing you don't want to do is go caving alone, because if you get hurt, who's going to help you out?
Yeah.
You could be there days before somebody would find you. So never go caving alone. Always tell the landowner you have to have permission to go to any cave, whether it's public or private. You have to have a permission of some kind. Otherwise, you're trespassing. So we have the do's and don'ts there. Don't do anything above and beyond your capability. Don't go down into a 200-foot pit unless you are trained to rappel and also get back up the rope.
Yeah.
That's the important part. One part is optional, the other is mandatory.
Yeah.
So there are do's and don'ts there. The local chapter does a lot of wonderful things, whether you're just a recreational club or a project club such as mine. We work with landowners. We develop good landowner relations so that legitimate cavers can go back to the cave.
And find some fascinating things.
Find some fascinating things. We are finding undocumented caves, even for the National Forest. And when you think about the National Forest, how do you manage caves if you don't know they exist?
Yeah.
How do you take care of them? Well, you don't. So we're the eyes and the ears of the National Forest, as well as national parks, state parks, and so on. So because we have the personnel, they don't.
Yeah.
They may have the funding, but they don't have the personnel. So we do that. And through the local caving clubs, I developed my skills. I started as a greenhorn like anyone else, and didn't know what I was doing, didn't know what equipment I needed, and so the village elders within each club, which I'm now a member of, I guess, the Village Elder Club.
You and I both.
But at any rate, this is where you learn how to do it right. This is where you learn how to get the right equipment to do the job safely. And you also develop a conservation ethic. We have a phrase, take nothing but pictures, leave no trace of your visit, and kill nothing but time. That way we leave the cave exactly the way we found it so that others can take advantage of that cave for what it is instead of what you made it into. We've seen caves that were garbage dumps filled with graffiti and trash. Well, that's no way for a cave to be. We want caves in a natural state. They're ecosystems, delicate ecosystems, and they don't want our trash.
Could you talk a little bit about why that's, I mean, I think that's important whenever we're in any natural or wild area, but why it's even maybe doubly important in caves?
Yeah.
The,
Caves are among the most delicate and fragile environments on planet Earth. We're talking about ecosystems where if one little thing goes wrong, the entire ecosystem can get wiped out. If you take salamanders out of a cave, their predators have
Whole
nothing
food
to
chain,
eat.
yeah.
They are not eating whatever they're supposed to eat, and so it disrupts the entire ecosystem. And so we have to be good to caves. For all we know, the cure for cancer lies in a substance produced by a cave animal. So we don't want to harm the ecosystem. Bats, of course, are the most important species of mammal on planet Earth. If you wiped out the elephant, it would only affect certain parts of the world, and we wouldn't know exactly how that would disrupt the ecosystem there. But if you get rid of bats, the entire world is affected.
mm-hmm.
The Amazon rainforest will no longer be the Amazon rainforest without bats, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important for us to understand that when we visit a cave during the daytime, we're walking into someone's bedroom
mm-hmm.
during their period of sleep, the bats.
And I think because these systems are often so isolated from surface processes, it's just like Neil Armstrong's footprint is still on the moon. A footprint made in a cave today could still be there in 50 or 100 years, potentially.
Yes.
In certain situations.
In fact, one of the caves we manage has prehistoric human footprints
mm-hmm.
that look as though they were made yesterday, because there's nothing there to affect it.
And that's not considered as valuable if you or I go in and make that footprint today. That's
Yeah.
vandalism, but
Yeah.
but
Especially if it's in the wrong place. If you
mm-hmm.
put a boot on flowstone, that's different than putting a boot on a muddy floor.
makes me cringe just a little bit thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah. I've spent over 30 years fixing some caves that were vandalized in just a little brief period of time. Only takes a second to break a stalactite. It takes hours to repair it,
mm-hmm.
even if you have all parts.
And doing such a thing is against both state and federal laws, correct?
Yes. Missouri has the Missouri Cave Protection Act of 1980, and the federal lands, caves within federal lands, are protected by the Federal Cave Resources Protection Act.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, various states and counties have their local laws as well.
Coming back to something you mentioned earlier about one of the advantages of joining a grotto, getting involved with the village elders, is learning how to cave safely and how to cave with a group of people. When somebody gets injured in a cave, it can be quite an ordeal. Just a quick story of my own. The very first time I went caving was in 1992. And that weekend while I was caving, this was back when I was in college, they had a documentary on TV that my parents, knowing that their son off at college is going caving for the very first time, and it was about when Emily Mobley Davis was injured in Lechuguilla Cave in New Mexico near Carlsbad. And this is one of the most technical caves in the world, and she was very far into it, and they had to do a lot to get her out. It took days, and
Mm-hmm.
that was my parents' vision of my first time caving. But
Yeah.
I wasn't nearly as interested in a cave. But I think that's a good point, right? If you get injured, you're not just putting your own life in danger, but the people who are going to have to come in and rescue you are endangered, and the cave is endangered.
Yeah. I don't know the price tag on Emily Davis's rescue, but over 100 people were involved over that span of time. Mm-hmm. And so we're talking great expense. Mm-hmm. But also, yes, it's one thing to bring yourself out of a cave on your own, but when you're carrying someone, now you've got that extra challenge. Mm-hmm. We try to cave as safely as we can so that we don't get hurt, the cave doesn't get hurt, and again, we try to please the landowner whenever we can. so that we can go back someday. So we do a lot.
What happens if you knock on a landowner's door and ask to go in to the cave entrance they own, and they say no?
Then you go to another cave. I mean, you can try again. You can try again someday, but there are over 7,000 caves in Missouri, in the United States alone. So if you can't go to that one cave, well, you've got many other caves you can go to. And the fact that that my club is a project-oriented organization, we're a 501c3. That gives us a little bit of respect. And landowners that's good news for them. We're not just a bunch of good old boys wanting to party in a cave. So they don't see any harm to them or their cave when they see us. But we do get people who don't want anyone.
And I know from personal experience and many stories that after years of cultivating a relationship between a grotto and a landowner for access and protocols to enter, one bad apple can show up, sneak in a cave, and block everybody out from then by making a landowner really upset.
Unfortunately, that has happened far too often. Yeah, yeah. We all have to be on our good behavior.
Which is another good reason to join your local caving club, to avoid.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Now, how would one find a caving club?
Go to the website of the NSS, which is caves.org, and they have a place where you can find a local grotto. So you find a local grotto, and it gives you contact. They have contacts for each local grotto. Local grottos often have their own websites. The local one here in town, for instance, spgcavers.org, is an easy website. We also tell landowners about our website, because then they can look up and see what kind of things we do.
I think we have educational material on ours.
Yes, yes.
We're sure that we can give landowners.
We have Karst in the Ozarks, which is a great 3-part video starring Tom Ailey, and we have many other things. We have a digital version of our Caring for Our Karst, which is a small publication that we published for landowners, and it talks about caves and karst and so on, how to take care of your cave and sinkhole and so on. Right. So another thing I want to mention is that when you do go caving, there's all of the preparation beforehand, then there's the caving itself, and then what to do after you get out.
And I think that might be good for one more segment, because I want to delay you a little bit. Caves.org is the National Speleological Society here in the U.S., but I believe their website also links to, if somebody happens to be watching from another nation, there are a few similar organizations in other nations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think they have links on their website, not only to the individual Find the Grotto in your state, but also the other international groups.
Every country with major karst and caves has an organization of some kind. Sometimes it's state-owned, sometimes it's a private organization, but cavers, are all around the world. Whether you look to France or Germany or Austria or Australia, they're there. They're everywhere. And they have links. And when you become a National Speleological Society member, you get a member's manual, and it has a list of all of these other international organizations as well. So,
and I'm going to go back. I know when I was growing up, I believe one of the major outdoor environmental organizations used to say, take nothing but memories and leave nothing but footprints. But that really is not the motto in caves. It is take nothing but photos and memories and leave no trace if you can, and cave softly. So
cave softly means not breaking and trashing something out or ruining or damaging an ecosystem. Because the ecosystems recover so slowly. Good example, there was a major siltation event in Sequioto Cave here in Springfield. 2-3 days ago, we found the first life forms in the passage that got silted. We found 4 bristly cave crayfish and 2 Cicadodia isopods.
And I think that's the mud siltation event that I was called to actually about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a sinkhole collapse that added a lot of extra mud into the cave all at once. It ran looking like blood red because it was red clay mud.
Yeah.
And so it's taken 4 or 5 years for the critters to recover from
Yeah.
that, and that was a relatively natural event. And so had that been a sinkhole that people had thrown trash in or anything like that, that
Sure.
would have been,
Then
we'd still be looking for life.
liquid Drano and battery acid would be included. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be tough. So,
Yeah.
well, I think that'll probably wrap up this segment, and then we'll come back with one more segment, and I'd love to hear what you do when you come out of a cave. I
Okay.
think that's a great idea.
All right.
Thanks.